Welcome back to Your Mic. Today, we step into the story behind Famous in Gravy, a podcast that's all about turning celebrity biographies into celebration gamification and meaningful life lessons. Michael Osborne, a pioneer in independent podcasting and creator of 3 successful shows, crafts each episode with sharp trivia, clever hooks, and a blueprint for creative fulfillment. The journey is what he lives for, and each story is a reminder that success is not about the finish line, but loving the process along the way. You're going to see Michael live as a keynote speaker, one of 6, at Speke Fest 2025, happening next month at the National Museum of Funeral History in Houston, Texas. Grab your tickets now at speakpodcasting.com/SpekeFest 2025. Michael, you have had tremendous success in monetizing not 1, not 2, but 3 different podcasts. And I love what you said pre-show, pre-recording, that you're trying to use the current one, Famous in Gravy, as a case study for independent podcasters. So let's start there.
Yeah. So I Famous in Gravy has been an exciting journey in terms of kind of how we put the show together and how we are executing it on a shoestring budget. So, I've developed a little bit of a framework for how I try and, get people going if they want to develop a show that, can be monetized and lead to success. And for me, step 1 is inspiration. What are you listening to? What are the shows that you're really into? And can you deconstruct them, begin to critique them, take them apart so that you can apply what's working on other shows to your concept? I think there's a lot of opportunity for innovation in the podcast space overall. And so those are steps 1 and 2 for me in terms of putting together a show that, can have a really high ceiling.
Let's go back to the name Famous in Gravy, because the show is a history show, but it's not just history. It's about dead celebrities, but not just any dead celebrity. It's about dead celebrities who have recently passed. So I got to know, selfishly and for the audience, why the name Famous in Gravy?
Oh God, I need a better answer to this question. I'll tell you the backstory. Part of it is it's a little ambiguous. And almost deliberately ambiguous. We wanted to secure the IP. And when we were looking around at other podcasts and what are the names of other shows, nobody had Famous in Gravy. Nobody had combined those
why.
2 terms. Yeah, right, exactly, because it doesn't make any. But I have a brother-in-law who's he's an ad guy. He was a creative director for a number of years, and we had written a bunch of names out on a napkin when we were brainstorming at over Tex-Mex one night, and he's like, "That's the one. I don't know what it means, but I want in." So I was like, okay, because that's like the main thing. You want to try and get somebody to click on it. I think that's what's interesting is that our audience will sort of backfill information. They'll make up a story about what gravy means. I mean, I think famous is pretty self-explanatory. On every episode, we have a famous figure. Gravy can be interpreted different ways. It may be like, what's the special sauce? What's the secret sauce on, to life on some level? It actually, the real answer is way more academic and boring. There is a Shakespeare play, I think it's Romeo and Juliet, where a character is saying, "Look for me tomorrow and you shall find me a grave man." And the use of the word grave in that context, it was one of those Shakespeare things where it was a double entendre. And I was like, grave, maybe there's something there. And my friend Amit was like, Famous in Gravy. And I wrote it down on the napkin and it became the name of our podcast. So it's a little bit cryptic. Yeah, I know. But
okay, I get it now.
I mean, but I think that the thing is, there's only so much to get. It really is, because every episode we ask this question: would you want that life? Right, and that is a conversation starter. It's a thought experiment. It's a way of talking about somebody's biography and somebody's story, but also turning it back on ourselves. And I think the gravy piece is like really asking what makes for a meaningful life. What are we actually after in terms of our own desires, aspirations, fears, trade-offs? What makes for a meaningful life is, not exactly well captured in the title, but that's what we're after in terms of the concept.
It never occurred to me that gravy meant was some kind of reference to grave. But the podcast is, because the podcast is indeed about dead celebrities. and graveyard is where they are.
Right.
But gravy is spelled like gravy with mashed potatoes and steak.
Exactly. Nobody ever reads grave into the gravy part of Famous and Gravy. I mean, the thing is, it is a dead celebrity show, but we're not like deathy, we're not like fixated on what happens in the afterlife. It is quite the opposite. If anything, it's a celebration of a life story. And another way of looking at, what we're trying to do episode to episode is it's almost more like literary criticism that, it's like a book club, right? You read a book in a book club and everybody gets together and talk about like, what did you get out of it? What did you think of the main character? How about the plot? How was the story? How was how did it go down? Celebrity biographies are kind of similar. There's a common narrative. It's almost as if we have all read this book collectively because we just know so much about celebrity life that we can begin to deconstruct it and add elements to it in a kind of with the lens of a kind of English seminar class.
Let's go back to how you open up each episode because it is my opinion that a lot of newbie podcasters don't really know how to start. And it's either the obscure clip from the middle of the episode that has zero context, or it's a 3-minute long cold open. I love cold opens.
Yeah.
Or it's the 3 minutes, no cold open, no produced intro, but it's Freddie and Mike bantering about their weekend before they get into the actual topic at hand. And so what you have managed to do with Famous and Gravy is flip the script when it comes to how to begin a captivating podcast episode. So please, why don't you tell everybody who's not familiar with the show how you do this?
Absolutely. Before I do, let me just say, dude, you and I are in 100% agreement. I think the first 3 minutes, if not the first 90 seconds, if not the first 15 seconds of a show, the listeners are automatically saying, am I in or out? So you have got to set a hook early. And if there is no context or if there's no anything that grabs your attention immediately, you risk them bailing and never coming back. So we start every show with a kind of bluff the listener quiz. It started, I was really into the show Heavyweight. I don't know if you know that one.
Never heard that one.
It's a fun show. It's I think the producer was at one point on This American Life, but he's very dry sense of humor. And every episode he calls this woman Jackie up and kind of messes with her head. And it's funny. He's like, can I curse on this show?
Absolutely.
He's fucking with her. And it's great. The way he's fucking with her is like, hey, Jackie, it's me. And she's like, what do you want? And then, 90 seconds in, the show starts. The other point of inspiration was, wait, don't tell me. The NPR bluff the listener thing. So what we do on Famous and Gravy is I will read the subject's obituary. I'll find some clues from their obit, and I'll make a quiz where I give one clue at a time, and the listener has to guess who is who the person is. And I try and show them all, throw them off the scent. So there's like 4 or 5 clues, and then it becomes increasingly revealing over time. But it's also a way of introducing kind of trivia information and beginning to prime the listener for what we're going to do in the full length of the episode, right? We're starting to pepper it with some of the spicy stuff from their life, like little bits of trivia you didn't know.
It's like you're gamifying the podcast episode. And that's what I love about it, because the first time that I listened to your podcast, it was like, wow, this is not just a cold open with 3 talking points, which is what I do and I'm a fan of. This is how you start a podcast episode about Stan freaking Lee or Anthony Bourdain. This is how it's done, baby. It's just it's a different take on it. I love it.
Well, thanks. I mean, I do think gamification, I'm glad you brought that up, because the whole show is kind of gamified in a way, but there is something about there's a reason we watch game shows. We're playing along. And audio for me has always been a vicarious experience. The best shows, I feel like I'm sitting in the room in a conversation, or I'm picturing the story as it's being told. Or if it's a game style show, then I feel like I'm a contestant. I feel like I'm playing along. So this was a way of sort of like bringing people into that mindset of a vicarious experience, from the get-go, right from the gun.
And you're making the listener a part of the show. And it's like, oh, well, I want to see it. Does this next guy get who it is? No, he doesn't. Does this next woman get who it is? And then by the time you know it, you're roped into the episode and you're like, all right, I got to know who it is. And now I want to know what Michael has to say about this week's topic.
And it's also sadistic. I mean, to be clear, like I am fucking with them, and which is the delight for me, right? But the other thing I'll say about this is actually, I'm so glad you were talking about this segment. I think I shared this with you before, Freddie. This has actually become a kind of hack that I'm really encouraging people, especially new creators, to consider. So the show is now at a place where we've got a critical mass of audience where people are calling in or writing in and saying, hey, I want to be on the Bluff the Listener segment. That sounds kind of fun. I am now using that opportunity to, when I record with a guest, I'll say, hey, can we hang on for 15 or 20 minutes and just have a conversation? And I'll ask them questions like, how did you find the show? What other shows are you listening to? Where are you exactly? What do you do? And I have been able to use this segment and this listener call-in, device as a way of doing audience research. And I got to tell you, man, that has totally unlocked all kinds of thinking for me. I have such a better theory of the audience because, I've been working in podcasting for 15 years or so now. And this is the first time I've gotten a show where I am having like regular organic conversations and engaged conversations with our audience. I think this is a problem a lot of newbie creators run into. You launch a show, you put it out there, you're broadcasting it, and you have no idea how it's being received. You're just not hearing what people are getting from it. So this whole segment is doing like triple duty for me.
Let's build on that because you and I have an affinity for new podcast hosts, and we want to see these guys and gals succeed, right? So someone's listening to this episode. They're like, Michael, that is genius. I want to do what you're doing. Oh, wait a minute. I don't have the technological capability, or, oh, that sounds too complicated, or, oh, insert your excuse here.
Yeah.
What is your advice?
I think that it's interesting because I think that there's a lot of myths out there about podcasting. There's a myth that it's cheap. There's a myth that it's easy. There's a myth that it's inexpensive. There's a myth that it's lucrative. And I think that there are ways of making it cheaper and easier and even, lucrative is a dangerous word, but at least like a way of monetizing and earning a living, if not, a side hustle, whatever your expectations are. So I do start whenever anybody comes to me and says, I want to start a new podcast, a lot of what I do is expectation setting. And I say, look, it is hard to build an audience. It's a very crowded space. And I want you to first and foremost consider this to be an act of creative self-love. I want you to be doing this for you. It's like learning an instrument or writing a book or learning whatever kind of creative activity. So that's sort of thing number one. I feel like it always has to come back to that. And I can say, like, in all honesty, for all the success I've had with my shows, Famous and Gravy, actually all of my shows, but Famous and Gravy continues to like be really fulfilling. I love working on every single part of this show. I love the research. I love, getting my notes ready. I love recording. I love editing. I love publishing. I love, talking with my audience. So that's one thing I say. I then also say, it kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier. I really do think that it helps a lot to become mindful of your own tastes and your own habits. Start by like, what are the shows that you're into? And start to ask yourself, why are you into it? What is it about the either story being told? What is it that you're learning, that you're getting, that the need it's fulfilling? What's the vibe? What's the parasocial relationship? Why are you into particular creators? Why do you want to hang out with them? And then see if you have some of those qualities. How do I tell a story like that, or introduce value like that, or, bring out the side of me that I think people are really going to like? And I think that third thing is the hardest, right? Because being a host, your ego kind of gets tangled up in it. It's kind of hard not to, right?
Just a little bit.
Just a little
Teeny tiny bit.
I am a big goddamn deal because I'm on microphone. And I think, and I think like everybody knows, like, okay, I want the good side of me to come out. And how do you get that step back advice from somebody saying, the good part of you is coming out in these places and the shitty part of you is coming out in those places? So I do think that a lot of, what's necessary at the outset is finding people you trust who can offer that kind of step back guidance. I do think, though, if you spend time on those things, looking at story and what are you learning and what is the, parts of your personality that are coming out, and you look at your core concept, what your show is about, and can you make it very original? If you set that stuff up at the outset, I think that there's all kinds of opportunity for growth, success, audience capture, monetization, all of those things. So to answer your question, I am a big believer in, spending time on the creative development process at the outset, and then, establishing a workflow, establishing a concept, establishing a structure. And then once you get that in place, you can be off and running and go from there.
I've never heard it put that way, Michael, where you're wanting people to listen to their favorite shows and take apart what it is they like. It reminds me of back when I was writing. Like, I have three novels, and they would be like, well, if you're not writing, you need to be reading, and you need to be reading your favorite writers. Well, This is the same concept. You're not stealing, you're just absorbing what it is you like, and you're incorporating it into your style and into your workflow.
Totally. I mean, I sometimes like to think that, I draw a lot of inspiration from Quentin Tarantino, right? Grew up in the 90s, or was an adolescent in the 90s when Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs came out. And there was all this discussion about how his movies were paying homage to all kinds of eclectic interests, old Westerns and Kung Fu movies and Scorsese, and they're kind of an homage and a pastiche. There's nothing wrong with drawing. In fact, I think it's a healthy thing to draw inspiration from, what you love. And there's an adage out there that great art begins with mimicry. And I believe that. I think that to grow into yourself as an artist and as a storyteller, it's good to channel your heroes and to be, conscious about that process. And so the other thing is that I just think that, like, becoming a student of the form is only going to lead to success. It's going to give you a language for describing and understanding what you're doing. And then if you can also involve other people, whether it's producers or assistants or whoever else is part of the collaboration, if y'all are talking about, what you're into, then you can develop a little bit of a shared language and a shared culture for how to, make whatever it is you're doing even better.
And also seeking the negative feedback, not just, hey, Michael, what did I do right? It's, hey, Michael, I have a feeling I may have screwed up on this episode. Can you please tell me where I went wrong?
Yeah, 100%, man. Because we're all imperfect, and we're all. I cannot agree more. A lot of what my work is doing as a consultant is exactly that, trying to offer constructive feedback. And I've done enough of work as a host to sort of know where I've screwed up. I had a friend describe me recently as a player coach, and I feel like that's actually not a bad way of, and I would actually put you in this category too. Like, by producing this show, you are able to report back to people you're working with. This is what's working. This is what's not. This is where I fucked up in the past. This is, how I opened myself up to the right kind of criticism so that I could grow and become better. Because that's a never ending process. We can always be better at what we're doing.
Oh, absolutely. To me, this is this is so much better than sports. Minus taking the hits from 300-pound offensive linemen, we get to stay in the game. And our workout can be daily and as long as we want, because we can study the greats. We can listen back to our own episodes. We can go to guys like you and seek that constructive criticism. And that's so hard, though, because we all want to be told that our baby is pretty.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I am able to find things that I like, if not love, in anybody I work with for the most part. I think that it's a funny thing, though, how I will meet, and I wonder if you have this experience too. I'll meet people who have great taste and who have the right ideas. And there is this gap between the thing you think you're doing and the thing you're actually doing. There is this kind of weird creative disconnect of like, why, this is my intention. I think I'm doing this. And it's like, it's not quite coming to, and I think we just have a hard time being objective about ourselves. That's what it boils down to. So I'm a big believer that the sort of atomic relationship of a great show is between host and editor or producer, that you need somebody who is there representing the concept, and you need somebody else who is there representing the audience. And that if you have that division of labor, then you can, begin to close that gap.
Kind of like you can think of them as the COO, the operations, how is it going to be efficient? And then having the creative director, who's the artsy fartsy. Oh, you know what, Michael? I love how you said this word at the 3-minute mark and yada, 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 yada.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, and I think, my favorite, like, this is a collaborative medium, almost all storytelling is and should be. So I think that there's going to be overlap in those roles. It's the division of labor is only so clear. But the more you can parse it out, the more, yes, you can have somebody who is, honed in on the practical aspects, and then some who are honed in on the creative parts.
I want to go back to Famous and Gravy. What is, if you had to narrow it down to one, and if you have to go to two, that's fine too. But what is one of your favorite lessons that you have taken from past episodes that you're able to apply to your professional life?
Wow. It's one or two. My God. Okay. Now it's a good challenge. I got to be able to answer this question. It's so corny and so trite, but I cannot be reminded of it often enough. It's never about the destination. It's always about the journey. That I think that one of the things about our show, we look at celebrity lives and we think about their accomplishments. What awards did they win? What movies did they make? What albums were awesome? What, championships, whatever. We think about the finish line accomplishments. What we are interested in the show is, but what was it like to get there? And did you enjoy the process of getting there? And, I'm somebody who believes very much in one day at a time and mindfulness and trying to be present. I am the world's worst Buddha, but I'm trying, and I think that, this is a lesson that we learn early in life, but it's one of those things we've got to revisit over and over and over again. And if there's one sort of cross-cutting message that I feel like I'm reminded of in every episode, it's that the more I'm in the present and enjoying the present and not obsessing about where I'm trying to get to or any kind of finish line, the better off I am, It puts me in a place of gratitude. And when I'm in that grateful state, that's the best version of me. That's the most generous version of me. That's the most useful version of me. And it's where I'm able to zero my ego out as best I can, because my ego is always getting in the way,
One more question, because the premise of the show is just so fascinating to me that if you could cheat, and go back, somebody from the past, and I want you to think in terms of 18th or 19th century, and if they died recently, so this would kind of involve time machining the art of podcasting back in the day, right?
It's Marty McFly with a podcast time.
Yeah, okay. And you got to go and do a podcast interview about somebody. who would that somebody be?
Wow. Okay. It's probably some Mark Twain. I think, if I think I'm so attracted to somebody who's got a great sense of humor first and foremost. And I think that there is something about humor that almost always has a shelf life. It exists within a certain kind of cultural context. And when you find comedians, like modern day comedians, who like the stuff from the 1960s or 70s or whatever is still funny, it's because there's a level of incisiveness and insight and cutting to some deeper theme that is, that is durable, that has a longer shelf life, that has more, truism to it. The fact that Mark Twain is still held up as this great humorist, and it's been a while since I've read any Twain, but I do remember reading it at one point and laughing out loud. And I think that, he still gets quoted as a funny person. So there's a sense of humor for me is a real signal of deep genius. So if I'm going way back in time, I think that'd probably be how I'd think about it. And he's the first person I landed on.
Fantastic. Y'all, please join us for Speke Fest 2025, Night of the Living Pod, October 10th and 11th. Michael is one of several keynote speakers that is going to be on hand at the National Museum of Funeral History. And you got to watch him if you enjoyed this episode. And if you enjoy Famous and Gravy, which you will if you haven't listened yet, then you are definitely going to want to see Michael, and you're going to want to see all of our speakers, workshop hosts, and panelists as well. You get your tickets at speakpodcasting.com/SpeakFest 2025. Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show.
Freddie, what an honor and a pleasure. I look forward to the event in a few weeks.